My girlfriend cheated on me and told me I'd never find anyone like her a year later. I'm dating a model who is in love with me. Hey Reddit. I've been wanting to get this off my chest for a while. I was casually browsing online when I stumbled upon a story about a guy whose girlfriend was cheating on him, shamelessly, like it didn't even matter. That instantly took me back to my own experience with my ex, so I decided to share my story. It all started 2 years ago. I met my ex, let's call her Mia, through a dating app. Not a hookup app, but one meant for serious relationships. At the time, I was 33, and she was 30. From the moment we started chatting, we clicked. Our sense of humor, interests, and even the way we thought about life aligned effortlessly. Conversations flowed like we had known each other forever. After a few weeks of texting and calls, I finally worked up the courage to ask her out on a real date. I won't lie. I was nervous. She was incredibly beautiful. Now, I'm not saying I'm unattractive. I consider myself a decent-looking guy. But Mia? She was on another level. I remember thinking, there's no way she'd want anything serious with me. After all, stunning women like her usually have endless options. Despite my nerves, I went to the date with cautious optimism. We met at a small taco place downtown, and let me tell you, the pictures did not do her justice. She had long, dark hair, flawless skin, and was wearing a simple black dress that looked like it was tailor-made for her. I expected to be overwhelmed, but instead, she made me feel at ease. The date exceeded all expectations, reinforcing everything I had felt in our conversations. Things progressed quickly. Within a month, we were exclusive. Though, in the back of my mind, I was always aware of how much attention she attracted from other men. She would casually mention how guys slid into her DMs or complimented her, even when we were together. But I trusted her. Instead of letting jealousy take over, I focused on enjoying what we had. Now, a bit about me. I work as a mechanical engineer at a company that manufactures industrial equipment. It's not the most exciting job, but it pays well, and I'm good at it. However, my boss, Derek, is a real piece of work. He's the kind of guy who takes credit for other people's success, throws employees under the bus when things go wrong, and, despite being in his mid-40s and twice divorced, thinks he's some sort of engineering Casanova. With Mia, everything seemed perfect. We settled into a comfortable routine, spending weekends together, taking turns cooking. She worked as a part-time model and influencer, so her schedule was unpredictable. Some weeks, she was booked solid with photo shoots and events. Other times, she had nothing going on. I never questioned it. I understood that's just how her industry worked. The first 3 months were incredible. We went out for dinner, watched movies, hiked together, and she even came to one of my softball games. I was so certain about our future that I began saving extra money from each paycheck to buy her a ring. I even showed my friends a few options, excited about finding the perfect one. Most of them congratulated me, patting me on the back and joking about how smitten I was. Not everyone was on board, though. One day at lunch, my boss, Derek, overheard our conversation about engagement rings. With his usual smirk, he sarcastically remarked, "Make sure she signs a prenup. Girls like her always have a backup plan." I brushed it off. Derek had always been cynical about relationships, especially after his second divorce. But over time, I started to notice a shift in Mia's behavior. At first, it was subtle. She took longer to reply to my messages, but when we were together, she was glued to her phone. Then, she began canceling plans at the last minute with vague excuses. She started showing up late to important events, barely apologizing. And then came the attitude. She began making offhand comments about how I should treat her better, implying that my effort wasn't enough. She expected expensive gifts just because we were in a relationship. Suddenly, she wanted to dine at upscale restaurants every weekend instead of alternating between home-cooked meals or casual spots. She even started sending me links to designer handbags and clothes, casually mentioning how good they'd look on her. When I told her I was saving for a ring, for our future, her response wasn't what I expected. Instead of being touched, she treated it like a financial investment, reminding me how lucky I was to have her. "Do you know how many guys would kill to be in your position?" she'd say with a smirk. It felt like she had put herself on a pedestal, expecting me to worship at her feet. The woman I fell in love with the one who used to get excited about cooking together, the one who talked about our future with genuine enthusiasm, was starting to fade away. And in her place was someone who acted like she was doing me a favor by staying. She stopped putting in effort. She didn't cook anymore, even though she once made the most incredible pasta dishes. She never suggested date ideas. When we were together, it felt like she was just there, expecting to receive, but never offering anything in return. I finally confronted her, asking if something was wrong or if I had done something to upset her. Her reaction caught me off guard. She got defensive. Instead of answering my concerns, she turned it around on me. "You're too needy. My exes never needed constant validation like this. Maybe you should be more confident. I'm not an insecure teenager, but isn't it normal to expect your partner to care, to show interest?" After that conversation, I started doubting myself. Was I overreacting? Was this just what happened when the honeymoon phase ended? But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Then, about a month into this strange phase of our relationship, something good finally happened. I got a prom, more excited than seemed normal for a simple work dinner. She kept asking about the guest list, specifically if Derek would be attending. That was the first time I felt it, that nagging, uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I tried to convince myself that maybe she was just nervous about meeting my boss, who I had often complained about. Maybe she just wanted to make a good impression. But something wasn't right. The night of the dinner, I picked her up from her apartment. And wow, she looked stunning. She had clearly spent hours getting ready, wearing a tight red dress that, as far as I could tell, was designed to make heads turn. Her place was small, and mine was too far from her work. We talked about our future, even about names for our future children, something I hadn't anticipated so soon, but went along with, because I was so happy. I started saving extra money from each paycheck to buy her a ring, and even showed my friends some models I thought were suitable. Most of them congratulated me, patting me on the back and joking about how smitten I was. Not everyone was on board, though. One day during lunch, Derek, who had overheard us talking about the ring, sarcastically commented that I should make sure she signed a prenup, stating that girls like her always have a backup plan. I didn't pay much attention. Derek had always had a cynical view of relationships, especially after his second divorce. Over time, I started to notice a shift in Mia's behavior. It was gradual at first, slow replies to my messages, but then when we were together, she was glued to her phone. She began canceling plans at the last minute with vague excuses, showing up late to events that were important to me. Gradually, her attitude became even more detached. She started making comments about how I should treat her better. Expected me to buy her expensive gifts just for being in a relationship, and suddenly wanted to go to fancy restaurants every weekend instead of alternating with home-cooked meals or casual spots. She would even send me links to designer clothes and handbags, saying they would look so good on her. When I expressed that I was saving for a ring for our future, she responded as though I was investing in something valuable, reminding me how many guys would kill to be in my position. Suddenly, it felt like she had put herself on a pedestal, acting like she was royalty and I had to pay tribute. While I had always known she was beautiful, this new ego-fueled attitude didn't sit right with me. She also stopped putting effort into the relationship. She didn't cook anymore, even though she used to make amazing pasta dishes. She never suggested new ideas for going out. When we were together, it felt like she was just there to receive, not to offer anything in return. I tried talking to her about what was happening, asking if anything was wrong or if I had done something to upset her, but her reaction was defensive. She turned it around, accusing me of being too needy. The strange thing was, as soon as we arrived, she began to ignore me, acting as if we were in a group conversation where I barely existed. She was incredibly friendly with everyone else, laughing at every joke, even the bad ones, being overly flirtatious, touching their arms, smiling excessively. With me, however, she was distant and cold, constantly looking for excuses to talk to Derek. At first, I thought it was just politeness, but it soon became clear she was blatantly flirting with him. Derek, who seemed to be enjoying the situation, was giving her suggestive looks, standing too close, and at one point even placed his hand on her lower back as they both went to the bar to order drinks. As the minutes ticked by, my anger grew. What could I do, though? Making a scene at a work function wasn't an option. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, that maybe Mia was trying to help my career by charming my boss. The drive home was tense. She talked non-stop about how impressive Derek was, how successful and confident, to the point where it made my stomach churn. She mentioned details from a conversation where he had told her about his vacation home in Florida and his investment portfolio, while I had been stuck talking about tax deductions with Dave from accounting. When we got to my place, I decided to confront her. "What was all that about?" I asked. "You were way too close to my boss all night." Her reaction was a forced laugh, followed by, "Are you seriously jealous? Grow up, I was just being friendly. Don't you want your boss to like me?" When I pointed out that friendliness doesn't usually include such intimate gestures, touching arms, laughing exaggeratedly at every comment, she became defensive, accusing me of being controlling and insecure, turning the situation around and making me seem like the problem for bringing it up. We went to bed angry that night, me, still fuming, and her, absorbed in her phone as if nothing could disturb her. From that day on, things became even stranger. She started texting constantly, yet she was very secretive with her phone, turning it away when I walked by, going to the bathroom to answer calls. All those classic suspicious behaviors you see in movies, making me suspect she was involved in something illicit. The following weekend, she canceled our plans last minute, claiming she had a golden opportunity for a photo shoot that, according to her, would boost her portfolio. Although I felt disappointed, I accepted it. I spent that Saturday doing chores and playing video games, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in my stomach. Finally, I texted one of her model friends to ask how the shoot had gone. The reply, in a supposedly sympathetic tone, was that there was no shoot scheduled. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I didn't reply, just stared at my phone, wishing the answer would change. But the reality was clear. She wasn't at a photo shoot, she was somewhere else. When she got back home, I'm important. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't a coincidence. I got out of my car, crossed the street, unsure of my next move, but as I neared the hotel entrance, I stopped dead in my tracks. There they were, Derek and Mia, right in front of the main doors, completely embraced. Derek had his arm around her waist. She was laughing at something he said. Then, before I could even process it, they kissed. Not just a peck, not a fleeting moment of affection. No, it was a passionate, shameless makeout session. It was like they were teenagers sneaking around behind their parents' backs. My stomach churned. I reflexively ducked behind a parked van, my heart slamming against my ribs. I felt like I was going to be sick. Then, as if to twist the knife deeper, I watched Derek casually hand her something. A small wad of cash. She took it without hesitation, stuffing it into her purse before getting into an Uber. Derek, completely unfazed, straightened his tie, slid on his expensive sunglasses, and walked back toward the office, like he hadn't just shattered my world. I stood there for 5 full minutes, frozen, feeling like my body had turned to stone. Finally, regaining some semblance of control, I texted my boss, lying that I was sick and needed to go home. There was no way I could sit through an afternoon pretending everything was fine. Back in my apartment, I sat in silence. My mind spiraled. Shock, denial, sadness, and then a rage so deep I could barely breathe. How? How could she do this to me? And worse, with my goddamn boss? It was like they had teamed up to humiliate me in the cruelest way possible. I needed proof. I started going through Mia's texts from the past few weeks, and slowly the horrifying puzzle came together. Her last-minute cancellations? They matched the days Derek left the office early. The nights she was too tired to see me? Those aligned perfectly with the days Derek had off-site meetings. And then, the final piece. Derek had recently bragged at a work dinner that he was flying to Japan next month for a major client deal. That was the exact same week Mia had conveniently mentioned the possibility of modeling work in Tokyo. It wasn't just an affair. It was a strategy. She had never loved me. I was just plan B. A stable backup while she chased after richer men. The next day at the office was pure torture. Derek, unbothered, smug as ever, threw casual jabs in meetings. "You seem tired today, huh? Not everyone has what it takes to succeed in this industry." I clenched my fists under the table. The urge to jump across the room and strangle him was almost unbearable, mix of shock and irritation, as if she couldn't believe I was actually kicking her out. Wow, overreact much? She scoffed, standing up and grabbing her purse. I stood firm, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. I'm done, Mia. You used me. You humiliated me. You don't get to stand here and act like I'm the one being unreasonable. She scoffed and slammed the door behind her, leaving me alone in the apartment that still smelled like her perfume. I sank onto the couch, my chest tight, my mind spinning. Derek. Mia. The betrayal. But as I sat there in the suffocating silence, one thought pushed through the chaos. I wasn't just going to move on, I was going to make them pay. Handed in my resignation the very next day. Derek barely reacted. He just leaned back in his chair, smirking like he had won some kind of game. Figured you'd quit sooner or later, he said, tapping his pen on his desk. Some men just can't handle competition. I clenched my fists but forced myself to smile. Some men have self-respect. With that, I turned and walked out, leaving him sitting there, still grinning like the smug bastard he was. The last few days at that job felt surreal. Coworkers I barely spoke to started acting weird around me, like they knew something but were too afraid to say it. I kept my head down, finished my work, and counted down the hours until I was free. On my final day, as I was clearing out my desk, I got one last email from Mia. The subject line just read, "One last chance." I deleted it without opening it. The moment I stepped out of that office for the last time, I felt like I could finally breathe again. No more Derek. No more Mia. No more pretending. A fresh start. And as I walked away, I made myself a promise. Next time, I'd be smarter. Stronger, sure, if I wanted to go, but curiosity got the best of me. It was a chance to reconnect with old friends, maybe even show how far I had come. When I arrived, the venue was buzzing with laughter and nostalgia. I caught up with a few familiar faces, sharing drinks and stories, feeling more at ease than I had in months. Then, as I was grabbing another drink, I heard a familiar laugh. I turned, and there she was, Mia. She looked different. Not in a good way, a little worn out, a little desperate. She spotted me and her expression changed from surprise to something almost hopeful. "Wow," she said, strutting over with that same confidence I used to admire. "You look good." I smirked, taking a sip of my drink. "Thanks. New job, new life." She tilted her head, pouting slightly. "Yeah, I heard about that. I also heard you blocked me everywhere." I raised an eyebrow. Wasn't much left to say, was there? She bit her lip, then sighed. "Listen, I was stupid, okay? I messed up. Japan was a disaster. Derek, he traded up." I couldn't help it, I laughed. "Let me guess, younger model?" Her face hardened. "Something like that." She looked away, then back at me, her voice softer. "I miss you." I shook my head, setting my drink down. "No, Mia. You miss stability. You miss someone who actually gave a damn about you. But you don't miss me. You miss what I gave you." She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "Come on," she pleaded. "We had something real." I cut her off. "No, I had something real. You had a business deal." Her face fell. "For the first... me." "Yeah, it was a good time. A little weird seeing everyone after all these years, but fun." "Sounds like you've been busy. Brussels, huh?" Her response came almost immediately. "Haha, yeah. Modeling life is a little crazy sometimes. But tell me about you. Jen said you've been through some drama, but came out stronger. I love that." I hesitated. Did I really want to talk about Mia? About Derek? About the betrayal that had nearly wrecked me? No, Sophie wasn't some therapist. She didn't need to hear about all that. "Yeah, let's just say it's been an interesting year. But I'm in a much better place now. New job, new mindset." "That's awesome. I always knew you were the kind of guy who lands on his feet." That comment threw me off. I never thought of myself that way. Resilient, capable, the kind of guy someone like Sophie would even notice, let alone remember. We kept chatting, the conversation flowing so easily that I lost track of time. What started as a simple Instagram DM turned into a full-blown conversation about life, travel, our old high school memories. Then she sent one last message before signing off. "Sophie, hey, I'll be back in town next month. Maybe we could grab a coffee? Would love to catch up in person." I stared at my phone, feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Genuine excitement. "Me. I'd like that. Let me know when you're back." Had some grand realization, shaking her head like she finally understood the gravity of her actions. I know I don't deserve it, but can we at least talk? She pleaded, her voice trembling just enough to make it seem real. I let out a slow breath, feeling nothing but exhaustion. We are talking. No, I mean, really talk. Just us. Maybe over coffee? I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so damn predictable. She had no one else left. Derek probably ditched her the second she stopped being shiny and new. The other guys she chased clearly didn't give her the validation she craved. So here she was, standing in my doorway, hoping I'd be dumb enough to let her back in. You don't get it, Mia, I said, stepping back just enough to make it clear she wasn't coming inside. You were my mistake, and I don't make the same mistake twice. Her lips parted like she was about to argue, but she must have seen something in my face that made her stop. For once, she had nothing to say. I shut the door. Mia knocked once, lightly, almost hesitantly, then nothing. I waited a moment, listening for the sound of retreating footsteps, but I didn't hear any. Still, I didn't open the door again. I wouldn't life to live, one that doesn't include you. Mia's lips trembled, her hands clenching at her sides. You'll regret this, she spat, her voice shaking with anger. I shrugged. Doubt it. She glared at me for a second longer before turning on her heel and storming down the hallway. I didn't watch her go. I just shut the door, locking it behind me. For the first time in a long time, I felt free, a dramatic and emotionally charged scene set in a modern apartment hallway at night. The main character, a confident and self-assured man in his late 20s or early 30s, stands at the threshold of his apartment door, closing it firmly in the face of a desperate woman. His expression is calm, resolute, and unwavering, symbolizing his strength in walking away from a toxic past. The woman outside, dressed in an expensive but slightly disheveled outfit, has tears in her eyes, her face a mixture of regret, anger, and desperation. She clutches a luxury handbag, her posture tense, as if she's about to make one last plea, but the door is already closing. Inside the apartment, the atmosphere is warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold tension in the hallway. A sleek laptop or smartphone sits on a nearby table, its screen glowing with an active video call. On the screen, a stunningly elegant woman, Sophie, a true model, smiles warmly, her presence radiating genuine affection and respect. The lighting in the apartment is soft and golden, symbolizing a fresh start, while the hallway outside remains dimly lit, representing the toxic past being left behind. The overall mood of the image should convey empowerment, closure, and a sense of justice. The composition should emphasize the contrast between the desperate ex-girlfriend and the newfound love, showcasing the protagonist's journey from being used and manipulated to finding someone who truly values him. The details should be crisp, capturing the raw emotions on the characters' faces, the subtle body language, and the symbolic contrast between the past and the future. The scene should feel cinematic, with a sense of finality as the door clicks shut on a painful chapter of life.